He wanted to show he is a special fighter. He wanted to demonstrate that by taking challenges early in his career. And that's something that I think we need to see more of in young fighters, right? And the reason why Jesse is able to do that at such an early age is because he was schooled correctly his whole life. He was taught how to fight. He was taught how to box. He was taught all these things so that by the time he was 21, 22, 23, and this opportunity came up, not only could he use his boxing skills, but he could take advantage of the youth. A lot of times people don't get opportunities till they're maybe 28, 29, 30, and they allow their careers to marinate before getting those opportunities. But by then they don't have that youth and that speed that they can take advantage of. By 22, 23, guys like Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, if you want to go back in the past, Mike Tyson, who became one of the youngest heavyweight champions in history. I think we need to see more of that.
Welcome back to the RBR Recap, episode 23. I'm Alex Burgos, joined as always by my man, Gabe Rivas, who's got the hotel fit behind him, fresh off the Jesse Bam Rodriguez fight versus Srisaket Sor Rungvisai. Gabe, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I enjoyed a nice week in San Antonio, getting food in the Riverwalk here. It's world famous. And of course, handling some of the events here for Matchroom and DAZN. So I'm doing very well. Got my flight later on and taking some time to talk boxing on this Sunday.
Nice. Yeah, we appreciate you joining us on this early Sunday morning. San Antonio is a spot that I hear is really nice. Haven't been before, but I definitely got to check out. There are rumors also that you ate a whole pizza to yourself. So I don't know if that can be corroborated, that story or not, but
absolutely I did, yeah.
Definitely. But we got a mouthful of fights on Saturday night, and it was a big one headlined by Bam Rodriguez, as I mentioned, versus Srisaket Sor Rungvisai for the WBC super flyweight title. As many remember, just not too long ago, Bam Rodriguez stepped in on just 5 days notice to fight for the vacant WBC title against Carlos Cuadras. And he looked really good in that fight. He seemed to be like boxing's best kept secret when we saw what he could do against Cuadras. But against Rungvisai, a lot of people were like, okay, well, this is another level, it would be now consecutive 2 fights against the 4 kings, of this era of the little guys, the fly or super flyweights, the other 2 being Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez and Juan Francisco Estrada. So, Rodriguez going in, a lot of people thought, and I think Chris Mannix made mention of this a few times, it's like you thought Rodriguez was the goods, but then also it's like, man, at minus 500, minus 600 money line betting odds favoring Rodriguez, is like, does Vegas know something we don't? It's like Rungvisai was being drastically overlooked. Back-to-back fights against 2 of these guys that I mentioned who have historically dominated in the last 5, 6, 7 years this division. Rungvisai being a power puncher, and so there was a lot of different dynamics. Could Bam do basically what he did against Cuadras against Rungvisai and refine that performance and look even better? A guy that came up 2 divisions, from 108. It seems kind of ridiculous to fight at this level against this opposition. And man, it's like when you're watching him, it's like, where have you been, man? Like, this guy is on point. And you see, the fanfare and kind of like fighters also who are commenting, Shakur Stevenson being one of them. It's just like, Bam's one of my favorite fighters. It's high level stuff that you could really appreciate it. And you can definitely tell Rodriguez has mentioned multiple times that high-tech matrix, Vasily Lomachenko, is one of his favorite fighters. You could see bits and pieces that he's taking from that blueprint. And what happened on Saturday night was, again, another masterful performance for the youngster, defended his title in dominating fashion, masterful boxing performance, and he stopped Rungvisai in round 8, forced the referee after a barrage of punches. You can check a beautiful camera angle by ringside Gabe Rivas. Great angle that just shows, the barrage of punches, ref stepping in. And I saw a couple of people saying, oh, not it was a little bit of an early stoppage. No, Rungvisai was worn down, broken down by that point. And you can't just lay on the ropes and get hit, whether they're super clean or not, or power punches. You can't just get hit with like 9, 10, 11 punches thrown at you and not respond with anything. So good stoppage by the ref. It was over at that point, and Bam Rodriguez really cements himself not as one of just the best up and coming fighters, but one of the best fighters now at super flyweight and flyweight, because after the fight, he did mention that the plan is to go back down to 112. And so you got some definitely mouthwatering potential fights there. So we'll get to that. But Gabe, I want to kick it to you. You were ringside, like we mentioned. You were doing the translating thing. You were on point there. We heard you, in the fight previous to that, MJ versus Ronnie Rios. But what were your thoughts? What was the environment like? A homecoming fight for Rodriguez. What were your thoughts on his performance? And, seems like the sky's the limit for this kid. Talk a little bit about it.
Beautiful performance from Jesse Bam Rodriguez. This is the kind of thing that a young boy or young girl dreams about when they're a kid, winning a world title and then coming back home and making a defense in front of all your fans. The Tech Point Arena was packed. A lot of people cheering on Bam Rodriguez as he came out and walked into the ring. And I talked to him after, and he confirmed that the game plan was to be very careful, use the jab, move around. And I was really impressed at the variety of his defense. He's able to step around, use angles. He's able to duck. He's able to slip. And for a few of the punches, he's able to stay on the inside and block the punches. His corner told him to be careful with that. And because some of these punches were just missing by inches, right? And they were landing on the gloves that could have easily landed a few inches to the left or the right and connected cleanly. But he was comfortable with his defense. And of course, he was able to use his youth to land quick shots, quick jabs, to really bombard Rungvisai and make him gun shy because of how quick he was and how quick he was able to counter. So just a beautiful performance by Jesse Rodriguez. And like he wanted to show, he is a special fighter. He wanted to demonstrate that by taking challenges early in his career. And that's something that I think we need to see more of in young fighters, right? And the reason why Jesse is able to do that at such an early age is because he was schooled correctly his whole life. He was taught how to fight. He was taught how to box. He was taught all these things so that by the time he was 21, 22, 23, and this opportunity came up, not only could he use his boxing skills, but he could take advantage of the youth. A lot of times people don't get opportunities till they're maybe 28, 29, 30, and they allow their careers to marinate before getting those opportunities. But by then they don't have that youth and that speed that they can take advantage of. By 22, 23, guys like Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, if you want to go back in the past, Mike Tyson, who became one of the youngest heavyweight champions in history. I think we need to see more of that from fighters and take advantage of that. But like I said, beautiful performance in the early rounds, boxing him very intelligently. By round 6, you could see that Rungvisai was, I don't want to say defeated, but he didn't look the same. The body language was different. And then Bam started to get a little closer, stay a little closer on the inside, and he felt confidence in being able to, stay at close range, move just a little bit before countering, and then eventually look for the stoppage. He got him to the ropes. He did a nice flurry, ended the fight right there. Everyone's cheering for him. I mean, what more do you want from a hometown defense? And this wasn't easy. Right. This is a guy who knocked out Chocolatito Gonzalez 5 years ago. This is a guy who beat Gallo Estrada. You can make the case that not only is he one of the best 115 pounders in the world, but he's the one who hits the hardest out of all of them. And Jesse Rodriguez, who just 2 fights ago was at 108, says, I want all the smoke. You know what I mean? Not only am I going to be one of the 4 kings in Carlos Cuadras, I'm going to be Sor Rungvisai, who has wins over 2 of the other 4 kings. You know what I mean? So excellent performance. He's demonstrating that he's a special fighter. And I'd like to see him manage his career the way he wants to do, which is to go back to 112 and start conquering, the division over there.
You got guys like Sonny Edwards, Julio Cesar Martinez, still really good fights at 112, even if we don't get the ones that we're talking about also at 115. Now, I find it interesting that, if he does go back down, he's basically laying up 115 for his brother, which is a really cool storyline. And he was very complimentary of his brother, his skills in the post-fight interview. After the in-ring post-fight interview, he also spoke with the DAZN crew and was like, look, my brother would beat my ass. He's like, imagine what he'd do to these guys, talking about Chocolatito and Gallo and, some of these other guys. While I don't agree with that, I do think, Franco puts up a really good fight with any of those guys and can beat any of those guys. But I think Bam is special. He's younger. So yeah, he can go back down to 112 if his body lets him, do work there, collect some titles. I think he should be favored, looking at the competition against any of those guys, I would favor him. And potentially, if he went back up and fought any of those guys at 115, yeah, you might be able to favor him now against those legends in Estrada and Gonzalez. So, one fight we'll never get. It's kind of like the Klitschko brothers. Is we'll never get, a Franco versus Rodriguez fight. They said that. They said if it ever got to the point where he's the mandatory or number, he would vacate.
Vacate, yeah.
Exactly. So he loves his brother, man, and I love that bond between them. Robert Garcia is doing a wonderful job with them, and Joshua Franco, that'll be interesting too if he does get that crack at Gallo Estrada as well. So we'll have to see how that shakes up, how that ends out, because if Franco does lose, maybe that changes the forecast and the plan for Rodriguez. Maybe he says, you know what, I'm going to go back up and I'm going to try to avenge that loss or something like that. So there are different options. And I do want to mention, Shakur Stevenson again after the fight on Twitter saying, ooh, Bam is one of my favorite fighters. Give him 2 years and he'll put his money on Bam to beat the monster anyway. So, I mean, just imagine in 2 years going up all that weight and fighting, such a fighter. Now, we don't know, what happens in 2 years, but that is the type of, props and what some of these other fighters see in Bam Rodriguez. Two things I really like that Bam does, he did last night a lot, is the high guard. So he mixes in, like you were mentioning, the high guard with the angles. So it's different types of defense. It's not just like, I'm going to walk in and you can't penetrate my guard. It's like, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to shift, I'm going to move, you're going to miss, but then also if you do hit, you're hitting gloves. So there's a lot of that he's comfortable with moving. The other thing too I like is like he was working these combinations where it's like jab, cross, and then coming back with a very hard jab. You usually see people 1-2s, 1-2, reset, 1-2. He was doing and it was catching Rungvisai off guard and making him reset. One, a hard 2, and then stepping into a hard 3. So it's like, wow, that shotgun jab was enough to get him off of his, his spots, and Rungvisai would have to reset too. So some really good stuff from Rodriguez, and man, I just want to see more. It was a quick turnaround from the Cuadras fight, but man, I would love to see him fight, maybe even twice again this year. He's just an exciting fighter to watch. And I got to ask you, what do you think, if we're talking about 112 versus 115, I mean, are there any fights that stand out to you that are interesting that would really pique your interest for Bam Rodriguez at this moment?
Absolutely. First off, shout out to Joshua Franco, who we are going to be interviewing for the RBR Recap series of interviews that we'll be posting on our platforms. I think he has a really good chance against anyone at 115 because I think he's very intelligent. I just don't think he's been given the opportunities to demonstrate that as of late for whatever reason. Like you said, there's all these different things happening with Gallo Estrada and with Chocolatito, but I think as soon as he gets a chance, he's going to show that he's a smart fighter. They call him the professor.
The professor, right?
You know what I mean? I think he's very intelligent. He showed that, and he really was one of the fighters who stood out to me during the pandemic because he was able to fight 3 times in that trilogy with Maloney. With regard to what Jesse Rodriguez is going to do with his career, I like the fact that he's moving down because I think it shows that he's strategic in the way he wants to manage his career. He showed everyone that he can crack with the best at 115. It's very risky to do that, to move up 2 divisions. It's a little bit more strategic to just move up 1 division from his original one, which is 108 to 112 pounds at flyweight, and say, all right, let me conquer the division here first, then go back to 115 pounds. And you get the best of both worlds. He shows he's the top fighter. He showed that he's already good at 115 and can beat them, but now he's going to let his body slowly adjust to 115 by spending some time at 112 and allowing his brother Joshua to do some work there with the other champion. So for me, the fight that stands out is against Julio Cesar Martinez because he's exciting, he's explosive, but I think given what we have seen from both fighters recently, I think everyone would see Jesse Rodriguez as a heavy favorite because of the technique, the style, and the fact that he's been kind of on and off in terms of his fighting. He's pulled out of fights for various reasons, injuries or whatever it is. So I think Bam Rodriguez has too much momentum, too much skill for Julio Cesar Martinez, but it seems like a very doable fight because they're both with Matchroom. Junto Nakatani was the WBO champion, and Sonny Edwards are both interesting fights, and Artem Dalakian. I mean, there's a lot to be done in 112. And these other guys, Edwards, Nakatani, Dalakian, these are all undefeated fighters. You know, I mean, there's a lot of work that could be done at 112 pounds. There isn't that much publicity and promotion in that division. I think the most popular one has been Julio Cesar Martinez, at least in Mexico and the United States. But with Jesse Rodriguez moving back down to flyweight, I think we're going to start seeing that division shine in a way that we saw it shine at 115 pounds.
Yeah, and I will add one caveat that may be an issue, which I hope is not. Sergio Mora made mention of this. After Rodriguez beat Cuadras, they said they saw him a couple weeks after, and he had blown up so much. Young man, take care of your body. I love tacos and chill just as much as anyone else, but do not blow up 40, 50 pounds, because that is going to be detrimental to your career. And that will be an issue if you're trying to bounce in between, 108, 112, 115, 118. That will probably be the one thing that could derail his success and his championship run.
As you and I both know, going into 30s and 40s, it's a lot harder to lose weight as you get older. At 22, 23, you can get away with it. But once you hit the mid to late 20s, I mean, it's already difficult to fucking lose weight.
It is, yeah. So he has that on his side, the age, like you mentioned. But, if you start bouncing in between divisions and the wear and tear on your body, it's just going to, cut your lifespan, your career span a little bit more. So would love to see him just be fight ready in terms of weight consistently, because when you look at guys, I always think about, guys like Bernard Hopkins. Well, the opposite. But like you said, Broner, fluctuating, going up and down, not fighting at a weight because he just couldn't make it anymore or wasn't disciplined to make it. I really think Adrian Broner would have had a long and fruitful run at the lower divisions if he hadn't jumped up to have to fight Paulie Malignaggi, simply because he didn't make the weight, couldn't make the weight, didn't have that discipline. Just imagine, I mean, he had the physical, people talk about, weight bully, this and that. If you can make that weight, if he would have, I remember when he fought Gavin Reese, and you're talking about Adrian Broner. I mean, he was just so much more physically imposing. If he could have stayed at that weight, he would have had a longer career, I think, and looking at. But I was thinking of guys like, Bernard Hopkins, Shakur Stevenson, guys that just, they walk and live boxing. And so at any moment, they're ready. They're 5 pounds off of weight, at any given moment. So I'd like to, obviously that's easier said than done, and not everyone's lifestyle, but if he could stay within that range, keep his body ready a little bit more, I think it'll do wonders for him in the future, especially if we were already looking, 2-3 years ahead against guys like, Inoue and things like that. So that wish list keeps growing for Bam Rodriguez, for us to be like, oh, I want him to fight him. And it just says a lot of how far he's come in such a little time.
Thank you for listening to the RBR Recap. Make sure to follow us on social media at RBR Recap and visit RBRRecap.com for the latest episodes.